Now, this bone here is the H-bone, and it's a little triangular bone that we need to remove so that we can get access to the main bone, the bone that is the leg. And the best way of doing that is just to start very gently, very gingerly with the knife, working around the shape of the bone. As with all boning, you just make very small cuts until you're absolutely sure where that knife is traveling, because what you don't want to do is to start slashing the meat, because that will cause the meat to toughen while it's cooking if it's too slashed to bits. So we just work the knife down along the bone and both sides of it. So move down here like this, and then into here, which is the other side of the H-bone. And hopefully, if I now start to pull that there, you can see the shape of the bone. It's this bit here, which then comes down into a triangle at the end. So, right, now when you've released it, we've got sort of 70% of that bone free now. There's actually a ball and socket joint, which you might be able to see in there. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to pull this bone back and release it from there, which always is the only tough bit really. There we go. And then we snip that out like that. That is the end of the leg. If I turn the bone round, that's the foot end of the leg. So we have now got to open this meat like that from that end of the bone all the way down to this end of the bone. So it's just working along the bone. Now, what we've got in the middle of the leg is another ball and socket, which is where the whole leg moves, and you can actually see the mechanism there. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to start with this end of the meat and literally just cut along that bone and then down either side of it so that we're releasing the bone as we go. Now, whilst you're working along the meat, sometimes it's easier to actually stand the meat up and look down that bone and release any meat that you couldn't when it was lying down. It's the sort of thing that you've just got to find which way you're comfortable working with it. Now, the other bone, you can actually feel the bone. If you put your finger into the meat, you can feel where the bone is, and it's actually going from there to there. So that's the line we want to take now, so that we can join the two bones up. The whole idea is to make as few cuts really as possible so that we're not cutting into the meat, because that will allow juices to escape whilst we're cooking. So we're just cutting enough to release those bones. Now we can get a little bit more confident about our cutting. And now really all we're doing is following down the other side in exactly the same way. Incidentally, when you go and buy a lamb shank from the butcher's, what you're buying is that piece of meat from there down to the ankle, really. That's what a lamb shank is. Now around what would be the kneecap is quite a large bone. There we go, one final cut. Right, that's the bone that we've removed. So not too much meat on there, that's good news. All the meat is still on the joint. So we put the bone over there. Now, the next thing to do is just make sure that we haven't left any little bits behind, because often, as you can see there's a little bit of cartilage which is left over from the bone. So it's very important that we then go back and remove any bits like that. And we do that just simply by working the knife around them. And I think any sort of butchery like this, the first time you do it, it seems really scary. The second time you do it, you start to get the hang of it. And very, very soon, the more you do, the more you start understanding it and the easier it becomes. So there we go, there's a little bit of cartilage there. Now, we need to open this piece of meat right out so that we can marinate the meat later and barbecue it or roast it or whatever we want to do. So in order to do that, we're just going to make a further cut along the meat just to open the meat out And that really is what butterflying is all about. It just means opening a piece of meat out as you would a butterfly's wings.